Before we made our first lick mat, I tried lick mats that were in the market, and there weren't that many because at the time it was a new idea. So I bought the competing product, and I thought, well, this is a pretty interesting idea. But my lab buddy, who has since passed, but in 2020, he's a lab. He's very food motivated. He could lick the mat clean in like 5 minutes. And then the mat was kind of floppy and it warped in the dishwasher. And I thought, okay, cool idea, but I want my dog to be busy long enough for me to get through a Zoom call.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pet to Pal podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Maltese. Today, I'm joined by Adam Baker, president and founder of SodaPup Enrichment Company. Adam, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Likewise. So we'll kind of jump right into it. If you want to maybe talk about how SodaPup came to be and how you founded the company and kind of take us through the timeline of your journey here a little bit.
Sure. So SodaPup started in 2012. I started it kind of as a hobby business in my basement. My career is actually in sporting goods. I was with Nike for a decade. I was VP of apparel for Under Armour, VP of footwear for Crocs.
Wow.
And got tired of corporate life. So I took a step back and still had young kids at home. And I wanted them to know what an honest day's work looked like. So I started this. I'd actually been thinking about it for a while because back in 2008, during the deepest part of the recession, I had heard these economic reports that talked about the pet industry, and it had grown 4% in 2008. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. A recession-proof business. And I'm a big dog lover. And, at the time we had 3 dogs and 2 cats. And so I thought, okay, well, this could be really interesting. And the thing that really drew me to the pet industry is I know how I feel about my dogs. And so this is an industry driven by powerful feelings. Which is similar to the sporting goods industry. I mean, that's what fuels, sports, whether it be high school sports, college sports, professional sports. That's what drives that industry.
Yep.
So kind of the big idea was, could I take these things that I've learned in a different industry and apply them to the pet space? Because honestly, I thought a lot of pet products, while they were functional, they weren't very attractive. They weren't very compelling. They didn't seem to speak to a consumer. And, my philosophy is things have to work for dogs, but dogs aren't the people aren't doing the buying.
Yeah.
80% of the time it's a woman in the household that's doing the purchasing.
Sure.
And so kind of the big idea was, can we take these categories of products and just make them, can we innovate by making them more functional, but also more beautiful, more compelling from a design perspective?
Yeah, the aesthetic as well as the functionality of it, for sure. And for anyone that doesn't know, I mean, definitely go check out SodaPup's products. They look good, they are durable, they're good products. So I think, if that's kind of the philosophy you went into it with, it looks like you guys accomplished what you were setting out to do, which is great. And how long ago was that? Sorry, you said that was 2008 when you founded SodaPup, or?
No, it was 2012. So the idea kind of hit me in 2008, and then I was making footwear at Crocs for a few years, and then finally decided to walk away from corporate life and be an entrepreneur.
Love it. I love it. And what has been the hardest part of building a physical product business in the pet space?
Well, I think this is true for any startup, particularly if you're making a consumer product. It's getting people to know that you exist. It's a very crowded space. It's and more so today than ever. It's a very, very competitive space. And, like most startups, you're starved for cash. Uh, and, you try to, and, we make molded products. Every product requires a mold,
Yep.
and molds are expensive. Like they can be very, very expensive. And so every new product can be a quite a big financial risk.
Yeah.
And so there's like this dual challenge of how am I going to pay to make a new product because of the cost of the mold. And then of course you've got to buy the inventory, and factories have minimums. So you got to buy 2 or 3,000 units.
And that's where the risk comes in, right? Because you're buying these products without the guarantee that they're going to be, flying off the shelves, right? So, you
Exactly.
imagine how
Plus
that.
nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
So um, it's entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. you
No,
know
for sure. Definitely. Yeah. Learning that the hard way. And, I think every entrepreneur knows the struggle of stepping on a few landmines along the way. But
it's been a long and winding road, I'll tell you.
yes, school of hard knocks. That's the life we chose.
Actually, we look uh, quite different today than when we started. I mean,
In what way?
totally different.
How SodaPup changed since you guys started to now?
Well, so in the beginning, we like the initial vision wasn't to be an enrichment company.
Hmm,
The initial vision was to be a rubber dog toy company.
gotcha.
And I was working with a manufacturer here in Colorado that actually used to produce Kong toys.
Okay.
They'd produced Kong toys for many, many years, and then they left that partnership. Uh, and I happened to walk in and meet with Claudius, the factory owner, like a month after they got a divorce. And here he had this big state of the art factory, a
Oh,
lot of knowledge of how to build rubber dog toys, and not a lot going on in the factory at that particular time. And I walked in and said, "Hey, I want to make American-made dog toys." So that our first product, the can toy, it's a durable rubber treat dispenser in the shape of a soda can, which is kind of the origin of the name SodaPup.
love it.
Um, that's actually not my design. That's our first design, but it's not mine. That belongs to the factory owner. Um,
It's
and
kind
he had built,
of the way you guys' relationship kind of, you met at the right time there.
yeah. So and he already had the molds. He had built it and pitched it to Kong, and Kong passed on it. And so he had $100,000 worth of molds sitting in his factory, and he said, "If you want to give it a shot, let's do it." And so that's how we started, with a single product.
Love it.
And then in the beginning, because we couldn't afford any other molds, it was like, well, let's do. We kind of followed the Kong model. We did a black rubber compound it's got a special additive in it that increases tear strength.
Gotcha.
But when you put the additive in, it can only be black.
Mm,
So we did our extreme version, and then we did our average version, and then we did a softer durometer puppy version, similar to what Kong had done.
cool.
And it was just a way for us to broaden the product offering without putting a lot of money into new molds.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, hey, a lot of, I think, being an entrepreneur is being resourceful, using maybe what you already have, and finding a way to kind of literally, not, no pun intended, but mold it into what you want it to be, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about, designing a toy that's both engaging and durable for a pet? Like, what kind of goes into that process?
Well, so I'll tell you that the kind of the next big step in our evolution was I met with a young entrepreneur named Colin Hatzman, and he had started a subscription box called Bully Make. You may know it. Um, so behind the Bark Box, they're the next most successful box, and they were that box was created because his dogs destroyed everything, and he wanted it. He's like, okay, here's a consumer need for people that have dogs like this. And so I knew I was going to meet with Colin at a trade show. It's not a traditional trade show, but I knew I was going to meet with him, and so I designed a range of rubber dog toys and 3D printed them. And then when I met with Colin, I said, "Look, as you get bigger, and keep in mind, I had already sold product to BarkBox,
Okay.
and they were giving me like you know, 130,000 unit POs. I mean, it was just like, wow, these guys can move a lot of product. Um, but I also knew that BarkBox was hiring their own industrial designers, and they weren't going to keep buying from brands. They were going to start designing their own stuff. So I was kind of like, okay, well, what do I do here? I see that subscription can be a big customer, so I need to go find the next biggest box, and that happened to be Bully Make.
Smart.
And so I said to Colin, it's like, look, as you get bigger, it's going to be harder and harder for you to shop the market for toys that meet your needs, that have the durability you require, that are on theme with whatever your monthly box theme is. I said, so how about I be your easy button? I will design you a new rubber toy every month. I'll sell it to you at my cost. It'll be the same price every month.
That's great.
And he was doing quite a bit of volume at that point, enough for me to make the cost of the molds make sense. And so, for a size large toy, we know that it needs to weigh about 8 ounces and it needs to be roughly 3 inches in diameter. The size and shape of the toy has a lot to do with its durability. It's not just the material itself, although that's a big part of it. And so because we had basically created this box to operate inside of, we knew, every month it had to weigh a certain amount, be a certain size. And so we're literally creating as many different shapes as we can come up with that fit his theme. And we did that
On creative pressure, like to do a new product every month, basically. Like for me, that would seem like, wow, that's a lot, like.
Well, we have lots of ideas. So I didn't feel creative pressure. Honestly, the bigger pressure was that Colin was accustomed to working on a very short timeline because he was just buying things from the open market.
Makes sense.
And, when you're cutting a 16 cavity mold or a 24 cavity mold, I mean, this thing is 2 feet by 3 feet and they're cutting the shape 16 times.
Yeah.
And it takes a month just to cut the
wow.
toy into the steel. And so it was, that was the bigger pressure, is just trying to get Colin to plan a little bit farther in advance so we would have time to pull this stuff off.
Yeah.
Now, the blessing in all of this is that he was growing like crazy. He's very good at digital marketing. He did a really, great job at building this. But he had a small warehouse. So he couldn't actually take delivery on a full PO because he didn't have enough room. And so what we were doing was we were shipping him what's called a Gaylord. It's a 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot box of toys, like every day.
Oh, wow.
And so every day a new shipment was going out to him. So he was receiving the inventory on a just-in-time basis. And keep in mind, he's putting 5 or 6 products in his box. So it's not just product coming from us, but he's got treats going in there and other things, nylon toys or whatever. And so it became, we got really good at it.
Sure.
Over time.
Barely. Grown, but yeah, the challenges of growth and scale is, a lot of people don't realize, like, even a successful company getting big POs, like, again, the challenge of like storage and warehousing and, being able to cut everything in the timelines. And, there's a lot that goes into it that I think, behind the scenes, maybe people don't realize. What goes into testing a product before it's ready to hit the market?
Well, so, the way we think about that is, the material is the same, the dimensions are the same, the weight is the same. And so, when you've done it for 3 years and you've made a new toy every month, 36 new toys,
pretty good.
You have a pretty good understanding of what's going to get destroyed and what's not. Yeah. And so we don't test every single new toy because we have so much history in prior toys that we have a pretty good understanding.
And so how should owners choose the right toy or the right?
I should say though, we developed our own rubber compound because we knew that the demands of the Bully Make box were quite high because of the customer that was buying it. And so not all rubber is alike. And so natural rubber, first of all, it's a natural material, comes from rubber trees. It's almost like tapping a maple tree for maple syrup, right? They score a tree, the latex comes out, then they cure it. And it has very high tear strength once it has been cured. And so it's what's called a cross-linked polymer. Now, a cross-linked polymer with rubber, it's different from TPE and other plastics, but rubber gets injected under very high heat and very high pressure. And then the cure time is, 6, 7, 8 minutes, depending on the toy and the thicknesses and so on. But what happens is you've got these molecules, and during the curing process, they're cross-linking. And it's that cross-linking that creates the strength. And the molecules are forever changed. So you can't recycle rubber in the traditional sense like you can with glass or other plastics. You can grind it up and make playgrounds out of it or something like that, but you can't recycle it in the traditional sense because the molecular structure has changed. Anyway, what a lot of, when you buy a rubber toy made in China, more often than not, they're putting a lot of clay in the compound in order to lower the price. Because clay is basically dirt. It's dirt cheap.
Filler.
And rubber is expensive. And so, if you buy a private label rubber toy from Petco or PetSmart, if a dog starts to tear it, it will just tear because it has very low tear strength. Whereas the compound that we developed has very few additives in it, very few fillers. And so you get more of this cross-linking, you get really high tear strength. And so we did test that. We developed it, we tested it, and we tested it, to make sure that it was FDA compliant and all of those things. So I don't want people to think that we've never tested anything.
No, but
Like I said, we created the sandbox, and it's like, okay, as long as we operate inside of this box, we know what to expect.
Gotcha. Yeah. Once you have the kind of general parameters and you know what your product and what your type of rubber can do and what it, how far it can be stretched. Again, no pun intended. Like you said, operating within that, I guess, is relatively easy to predict. How should owners choose the right toy or durability and toughness for their dog? Like how do owners know what enrichment product is best for their dog?
Well, I don't think there's one easy answer to that. The reality is that every dog is different. They have different food drive, and they have different tolerances for having to work on things, right? And so, we make basically 8 different product types, right? We make deep slow feeder bowls, we make shallow slow feeder bowls, we make lick mats, we make a product that we invented called an e-coin. An e-coin is a nylon disc 5 inches in diameter with a pattern on it. It's basically like a mini lick mat, except that it's made out of nylon, not out of a rubber material, because a lick mat is, it's a 1/4 of an inch thick, so any dog can destroy it. It doesn't matter what the material is, right? And so we're like, well, if you've got a dog with separation anxiety and you need to keep them occupied when you leave the house, you can't leave them with a lick mat because they'll destroy it. So we developed this specifically for that use. So that's what an e-coin is. Then we make traditional rubber treat dispensers. We call them e-dispensers. These are hollow rubber toys that are durable and you can put things inside. We make an e-stick. This is like a target stick for target training, but it incorporates enrichment. So we kind of invented this category. We introduced it last March. Very popular. What we didn't realize is that trainers often use a wooden spoon with peanut butter smeared on it.
Yeah.
So it was funny when we launched this. Honestly, my thinking wasn't any deeper than what other type of enrichment product could we make? And it's like, well, why not enrichment on a stick, right? So that it wasn't terribly informed, but then we launched it at Global Pet Expo, and all of a sudden I have all these dog trainers in our trade show booth saying, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And so we kind of, stumbled into that, but it's been a very successful new product type.
You have like a bestseller or a hero product out of all. I know it's probably your soda can, I would guess, but
no,
really,
believe it or not, it's not that. So we also make a product called an e-cup. This is an open top treat dispenser.
Okay.
And we have a couple of different designs. We have a honey pot and we have a flower pot. So it's kind of like, so you have to understand how some people use products, right? So take the Kong Classic, that, classic snowman shape, which by the way is a car part from a VW microbus. The guy, the guy who started Kong, Joe Markham, he was a VW mechanic, and he had a German Shepherd, and he would throw these, these discarded joints, the rubber joints. He would throw them out into the yard for his German Shepherd, and the dog liked chewing on it, and so that's the origin of Kong. Wow. Anyway, so some people think of a Kong as a chew toy. Some people think of Kong as a treat dispenser, just putting kibble in it, and some people think about it as an enrichment product that you can stuff with moist food and freeze it. And so the honey pot is basically an evolution of that third end use. The problem with putting moist things in a Kong is it's a bitch to clean.
Yeah.
All right. And it's really messy because it's got a vent hole, because with a small rubber toy, you have to have a vent hole because your dog can stick their tongue in and create an airtight seal.
Their tongue can get stuck. It's it can be dangerous. Yeah, that's a good point. You mentioned that.
So if you're putting moist things into a Kong and you got a vent hole, then you got to figure out how to block the vent hole. You can smear it with peanut butter. A lot of people like wrap it in tin foil and put it in a glass and put it in the freezer. And so there's all these
ramekin. Yeah, absolutely. Got to get creative.
There are all these workarounds. And so the idea of an enrichment cup, like our honey pot, is that it is stuffable, but it's got a really wide opening at the top. And then because it's so wide at the top, you don't need a vent hole because your dog can't create suction. Yeah. But it's perfect for use with, with raw food, with yogurt, kefir, pumpkin puree, all the, it could be kibble that's been, you've added chicken broth to it, or, the list goes on and on and on. And so, and dogs love it, and you can freeze it, of course, so you can give your dog, it takes my dog on a hot summer day when, they're only cooling themselves through their tongue. You give them a frozen honey pot and they'll work on it for 45 minutes. So it's great enrichment. There's no risk of getting their tongue stuck. It's easy to clean. So it takes that idea of the Kong and just, it's designed specifically for that end use.
That's smart.
And that's our hero product. That's probably our bestseller. But we have bestsellers in each product type. We have a best-selling slope beater bowl, a best-selling lick stick, and so on.
I've never tried your honey pot product, but I'm definitely gonna have to check it out and try it with my dog for sure.
Yeah, it's great and it's cute. So kind of the story behind it is because dog moms think of their dogs as their kids. I got to thinking, you're asking about, inspiration. Where does the inspiration come from? So I'm like, okay, I need an open top, cup type of treat dispenser. So I started thinking dogs are kids, children's stories, Winnie the Pooh.
Love it.
Pooh Bears, honey pot.
Progression. I love it.
Yeah. So that's how we got there. And then we, when we designed it, it's actually got like honey pouring over the edges, right? So like we tried to add just these little hooks that create that, like, oh my God, that's so cute, I got to get it.
Absolutely. I like the aesthetic of it is, I don't want to say just as important as, the functionality, but, people want products that look good in their house and look cute if they want to take a viral video with their dog or whatever, right? So, I think the honey pot idea is a cute one. I like that.
I think that for a long, long time, it just looked like it was engineers that were designing all the products, perfectly functional, but not compelling. Like the first lick mats. They just have little nubs or some sort of grid pattern, and they work, but we treat lick mats like a graphic T-shirt, right? So I come from sporting goods. I worked at Nike for a long time, and so Nike has this huge, graphic T-shirt business. And you walk into wherever, Dick's Sporting Goods. I know you're in Canada, so you don't have Dick's there, but so you have a folded you have a folded T-shirt display, and the kid walks in, and they see like an Attitude T-shirt, Just Do It T-shirt, or whatever. It's like, oh my God, I got to have that. Not because they need a T-shirt, they just like the graphic. So I'm like, okay,
That's what gets you interested in the first. That's what catches your eye, right? Before the product is good or not or functional or not, it's like, hey, when you see it, what's your visceral reaction, right?
right. And but more importantly, what you're doing is you're creating an emotional connection. So it's not just I need a tool that will do X, Y, and Z for me. It is all of that, but it's more than that. And so, what we've done, I mean, we have 35 different lick mat SKUs, and we just treat it like graphic design. So we've got all kinds of different designs. A lot of them are outdoor themed, some are mountain themed, some are ocean themed, you know, nature themed. And people collect them. It's fascinating.
Well, yeah, it's great. There are people that have, literally like they have more products for their dogs than than a human has for themselves, right?
Well, and also a lot of people have multiple dogs. And so,
That's true.
and on a Sunday evening, they'll do meal prep for the week. So they don't have to deal with it, during the week. And so you need multiples of stuff.
No, you're 100%. And
I,
just
I got to tell you, so we also have a flower pot. It does the same thing as the honey pot. I just had, and we're selling right now, we're selling a 3-pack on a promotion. I had somebody buy 7 3-packs.
oh wow.
And I wrote her and I was like, that's a lot of flower pots. And she said, I have 17 rescues.
Oh wow.
So imagine what her life is like.
I get that a lot too. If I go to the store and I'm loading up on treats or toys, whatever, the first question the cashier is like, "Oh, you run a kennel or something?" I'm like, "Ah, kinda, like slow stuff,
Right.
I want to just go back for a quick second when you were talking about, the suction, risks of like a Kong and stuff like that. What are maybe some of the biggest risks you see with enrichment products, and maybe when should a toy be taken away from a dog? When is it time to do that?
Well, of course, it depends on the product type, right? So, I mean, you really have to supervise a dog that's using a lick mat because lick mats are not made to be durable. They're not designed for chewing. And so you really have to keep an eye on your dog, particularly if it's a harder lick mat. So many of our designs, I'm a skier and a snowboarder, so we have rated our designs as green circle for easy, blue square for intermediate, and double black diamond for difficult. And so, if you've got a dog that's highly food motivated, you can give them a more difficult mat. But if they get frustrated, they'll bend it in half and chew the corners off. And so you do have to keep an eye on them. Rubber toys are designed to be more durable, but I've never met a dog toy that couldn't be destroyed.
Yeah. That's when I hear indestructible, I'm like, somebody can destruct that, but it's the phraseology just means strong toy, right? I think people need to be a little looser with the definitions. Do you think can enrichment be overused or used incorrectly in a way that can create problems other than maybe like a toy that, like a lick mat is not really meant to be left unsupervised and you're using it as like an unsupervised toy? Do you think like it can be misused or overused or used incorrectly?
Well, I think people have to understand that there are many types of enrichment and it's not all food based.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah.
So I think there's a risk of overfeeding your dog if you're only doing food based enrichment and you're doing a lot of it. But you're not, I mean, basically going on a dog walk and letting your dog sniff and explore is enrichment. And, a lot of trainers recommend changing your route so it's not the same thing every day because that's enriching for your dog. So I think the danger, we operate within the realm of food-based enrichment because these are the tools that we make. So I do think there's a risk of an over-reliance on food.
Gotcha. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
With more owners moving towards like slow feeding, fresh or raw diets, how has that affected maybe your product design to kind of like, influence or be able to accommodate people that are feeding their dog in different ways and with different, ingredients?
Well, we've basically ridden this wave. So food-based enrichment's been around for a while, but it was much bigger in other countries, Western Europe, Australia. During the pandemic, you could see on social media, what parts of the world were really getting behind it. And it's still kind of a new concept in the US. Um, but so I'll give you, to answer your question, I'll give you a very specific example. Um, so before we made our first lick mat, I tried lick mats that were in the market, and there weren't that many because at the time it was a new idea. So I bought the competing product, and I thought, well, this is a pretty interesting idea. But my lab buddy, who has since passed, but in 2020, he's a lab. He's very food motivated. He could lick the mat clean in like 5 minutes. And then the mat was kind of floppy and it warped in the dishwasher. And I thought, okay, cool idea, but I want my dog to be busy long enough for me to get through a Zoom call, Well, I need 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So our first pattern was a jigsaw pattern. So imagine a jigsaw puzzle and all the outlines. And it is really hard. It's also really hard to clean, admittedly. And that's kind of the trade-off. The more difficult you make something, it's designed to retain food, which also then makes it hard to clean.
But are your products dishwasher safe for anyone watching?
Oh yeah, everything's dishwasher safe. Everything.
Just wanted to put that out there for anyone watching.
Everything's dishwasher safe. Everything's FDA compliant. So anyway, so we put out this jigsaw lick mat, and then we started seeing on Instagram, people were mixing yogurt and kefir with spirulina and different, they were making different colors, and they were decorating. So it's almost like paint by numbers. Each piece of the puzzle they're doing with different colors. And I'll be damned. I didn't really ever imagine that people would do that. Now, of course, everyone was home with their dogs during the pandemic. And so
for a creative outlet, and that can be one. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So, and we know that it's primarily women that are doing this for their dogs. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe we should lean into that. Maybe every design that we do should have self-contained shapes so that you can put different foods in different. And sure enough, pretty much all of our designs have that capability. And then we did our first dog bowl, which is just a basic honeycomb pattern. It's a deep slow feeder bowl. And then people started using that like a charcuterie board. So they're putting different food types into each compartment. And then there's definitely a performative element. People are taking pictures, putting it on social media. And that fed our growth around the world. I mean, we sell in 48 countries now. And a lot of that is due to Instagram because people started posting. It's obviously a global platform. And then we started getting calls from retailers in, Germany and Spain and the UK and Finland and like, how do I get your product?
Yeah, when you talk about organic or, grassroots growth, I mean, nothing better than just, I even say in training, the best review or referral I can get is a well-trained dog, right?
Yes.
A happy owner, like when it's, oh, your dog's so well behaved. Oh yeah, thanks. I trained with Matt. Same thing. I think there's no better way for you to grow than an owner happy with your product, showing it off like, hey, look what I can do with my SodaPup bowl or, whatever it might be, right? Pick
right.
And that kind of leads, I guess, to my next question, which is like, what trends are you seeing right now in the pet products industry? Like, where do you kind of see things going?
Well, so I definitely see an acceleration of Americans doing more food-based enrichment with their pets. And obviously diets have changed dramatically over the last 4 or 5 years. And, you're seeing a lot of really interesting products that there just weren't a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of, dehydrated foods. There's a lot of food-based subscription companies now. Farmer's Dog is probably the biggest and most well-known. We've worked with Big Country Raw up in Canada for a while. They're a great brand. So you're definitely seeing an evolution of food available for dogs. A lot of these foods are also really expensive. And you've kind of seen a pushback, criticism of kibble. But now I think that conversation has come full circle and said, well, actually, kibble is designed by, scientists who understand the needs of dogs and they're fully complementary types of meals. So kibble is not bad. I mean, I'm sure there's some kibbles that are better than others, but anyway, so we're seeing that. The other thing we're seeing is a lot more kind of interactive. Well, so enrichment tools like ours, um, we have leaned very heavily into this. I think we may be the only company that's positioned ourselves as an enrichment company. That's what we do. But we're seeing a lot of other brands doing the things that we're doing now. It's the nature of the beast, right? You can never stand still.
There's always going to be, the copycats, but again, you guys have obviously been around for a while. You stood the test of time already. Your products are high
Well,
quality. There's a reason for that.
and in all fairness, I mean, we created two categories. We invented the lick stick, and we invented a category that we call e-chews. These are nylon chew toys, and e-coins for that matter. But our nylon chew toys have enrichment functionality, so you can smear food into the surface of the toy. So we did invent a couple of categories, 2 to 3 categories. But we didn't invent the lick mat. We just made it better,
Yeah.
right?
So
More interesting.
better
And we
milk.
didn't invent the slow feeder bowl, but our slow feeder bowls slow dogs down more than competing bowls. And they're more fun to look at. They look good on the kitchen floor. So, a lot of innovation is evolutionary.
True.
So, some would argue that we've copied what other brands are doing. I would say, well, we're doing the same product type, so we haven't copied your designs.
Yeah.
We're evolving the category with a uniquely SodaPup point of view. And then we've created a couple of categories. So I think there's more, you'll see more of those types of products. And then I think you're seeing more interactive types of toys, things that you do with your dog. And then there's this whole Internet of Things trend with, you know, remote operated balls that bounce and vibrate and move around the floor, and
Getting involved.
watering bowls that have a camera, so when you're at work you can watch your dog drink water and stuff like that. And that's not my bag. I mean, we're not going to make that kind of product.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would ever use that kind of product, but
Fair.
there's folks out there that like that.
So I guess kind of, talking about the competitors or other brands that are trying to do, what you guys are doing. What separates brands that succeed in the pet space versus, brands that disappear in a couple of years?
Well, the thing you have to understand about the pet space is that 90% of the product is made in Asia. And in a lot of cases, it's the factories that are doing the designs, and then they're just selling them to anybody that'll buy them. And so there's not really a distinctive point of view. And it's also a bit of a race to the bottom. Inferior materials and unimaginative designs. And so what we've tried to do, and it's partly because of my background, we have tried to develop a very distinctive point of view. So when you see one of our products, it's like, oh yeah,
The SodaPup.
that's a SodaPup. That's something SodaPup would do. Like just to give you a kind of a fun example, one of the popular shapes in nylon chew toys is an elk antler. And there's a bunch of brands out there. Some sell real elk antlers, but then there are also nylon elk antlers.
Gotcha.
And I hadn't done one, but I thought, okay, well, what would be a more SodaPup thing to do if we need an antler? And so we know that we're selling to women, and we do things like honey pots and so on. So I thought, well, what if we did a unicorn horn?
Okay.
Girls grow,
Yeah.
liking unicorns. And
Like,
so we did a unicorn horn, and we've got it in a natural color that looks like a real antler. But we also did it in bright pink. And then we did a little social media campaign where we talked about how SodaPup had a unicorn ranch high up in the Rocky Mountains, and we raised unicorns and puppies.
nice.
So there's a series of videos about the SodaPup Unicorn Ranch, and then we did a press release into the pet trade talking about the SodaPup Unicorn Ranch, and
Get on it. I love it.
so it was pretty fun.
I love it.
I think people got a kick out of it.
That's cool. That's cool. Maybe you already answered this a little bit, but is there something that's maybe popular in the enrichment world that maybe you think is overhyped? Like maybe it is those like tech products, or like you said, the remote ball or the camera water. Like is there something you think in the enrichment world that is just like overhyped?
Well, I'm not one to speak badly about
No,
what
fair.
other people are doing, but for me personally,
Mhm.
um, using an electronic device in lieu of me having a relationship with my dog
Yep.
is
That's
is not something that I would choose to do,
that's
right?
totally valid.
And I recognize actually one of my New Year's resolutions is to put down my phone. Like my dog wants to be in the bed with me, like physically snuggling, being pet, looking in my eyes at night, and I'm doing a TikTok post at 10:30 at night, and I'm like, I got to stop doing that. This is like
Dogs' love language is quality time. They just want that
it
quality
is
time with you, right?
absolutely for
um,
sure.
what product of yours maybe took the longest to get right? Which one did you find yourself maybe tinkering with, or maybe there were none, but like, was there one that like took a while before like, yes, that's it?
Um, Well, I mean, the the truth is there's a lot of stuff that we've done that we're discontinuing now because not because they're bad products, but because they don't have a broad audience.
Gotcha.
So, for example, we talked about how we built first subscription box, and
Mhm.
and by the way, BarkBox and BullyMake were not the only boxes we sold to. I mean, we were selling for a while there. Everybody had a box, and most of them have fallen away. And there's like three or four survivors. Um, but when you're building a highly specialized design for a theme for 1 month, that product makes sense in the box, but it doesn't necessarily make sense as a standalone product that
That's
is going to have broad appeal. So yeah, we've kind of come to terms with as much as we love all the babies that we give birth to,
yeah.
um, they're just not broad appeal, and we need to make room.
Yeah.
We need to make room for new stuff,
Fair.
and so we're kind of going through the product line with a scalpel and just uh, carving some things out. And then, I'll give you an example. So I told you we're running a promotion on the flower pot. The flower pot's a great product, and it's made from TPE, so this is like a synthetic rubber. Um, but it doesn't sell as well as the honey pot,
Mm.
and they are actually both the same price. So I've got these things positioned against each other, and one sells better than the other.
Mhm.
And so I thought, they're competing head to head, and the flower pot um, it actually holds up really well, but we had more flower pots chewed up than honey pots.
Interesting.
Like I've only had like 2 or 3 honey pots ever destroyed, but the flower pot is a little more often. So I thought, well, what if we make this out of a different material, which is less expensive and has different properties? So then I could have a lower priced
Yes.
product in a more durable material. It's kind of counterintuitive. The polypropylene, which is what we make our dog bowls from, it's a hard material. So a dog's not going to destroy it, but it is less expensive than TPE. So you could buy a polypro flower pot versus a TPE honey pot. You can pay $9.99 for one, you can pay $16.99 for the other. So now there's room for both. So to get back to your question, you launch this thing and you see what happens, and then it's like, that's not working. I don't get it. I really like this product. Um, and other people that buy it really like it, but it
Yeah.
doesn't sell as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to kind of just take a step back and say, is there a different way for us to do this so that they can both live and provide?
That's probably one of the reasons that you guys have been around so long, is I think a lot of entrepreneurs in any industry, not just the pet industry, but either like fall in love with their product or their idea or whatever. And sometimes like you got to listen to the market. Like the market's telling you, hey, like we're buying this instead of that. Maybe this one should be lower price, but people are just like, no, I know this is great. I'm going to keep it the way it is. And but I think, yeah, being able to like take that step back, look at it from a bird's eye view, maybe even like not get in your ego and your feels about it of like, hey, but I thought this was the best, but okay, but maybe it's worth tinkering and, changing it up a little bit. So I think that's really smart to be able to pivot that and then have them not competing against each other where maybe now there's a little bit more, like you said, of a broad appeal. So that's really
Well,
smart.
the one of the big lessons I've learned, and we've made a lot of product over the years, a lot of new designs, is I've learned that I'm not great at picking a winner. And I create them all. They're all my designs, right? So like some of them have really surprised me, and some stuff I thought was like super cute would do really well. It's just like it just never really found a home.
But you know what? It's almost like, I don't know if you're a sports guy, but it's like, you have draft picks. They're not all going to hit, but the more lottery picks you have, some of them are going to hit, right? That's
Exactly. We're just throwing stuff against the wall.
I love it. And that kind of,
Yeah.
again, like kind of my next question, which is like, if you could maybe go back and tell yourself something, when you were starting this company, or maybe like the biggest mistake you made along the way, like what would those be? Like, what are some things that you would like, go back and give yourself advice, or some, landmines that you wish you would have avoided on your journey here?
Well, I'll tell you, the initial version pre-SodaPup, there was another short-lived business, and I had licensed the slogan "Wag More, Bark Less," which was owned by a small company in California called Cloudstar. And Cloudstar made Buddy Biscuits, which are still around. They got acquired by a private equity firm, but I licensed that slogan "Wag More, Bark Less," and I did a wide range of products. I did collars and leashes. The idea was to be a lifestyle brand for dog lovers. So we had dog products, and then we had people products, coffee mugs, ceramic dog bowls, hats and T-shirts for people, collars and leashes, and rubber dog toys. And the thing that surprised me was when we went to talk to a buyer, they were confused about what we were. Because particularly with larger retailers, the way that they work is they buy nylon toys from Benebone and Nylabone. They buy rubber toys from Kong. It's like in their minds, brands stand for a product type,
Gotcha.
not for multiple product types.
Yeah.
And
Specific kind of vision.
yeah, and so that really surprised me that that thinking was difficult to overcome.
Like trying not to be everything to everyone kind of thing.
Well, it's not that. It's just that, well, are you a T-shirt company or are you a dog toy company?
Gotcha.
Are you a collar and leash company or are you a treat company? It's like, in their minds, it's like you can't be all of these things.
Yeah.
And in some ways, SodaPup I'm kind of doing the same thing, but it's more refined. So for example, we say that SodaPup is an enrichment company. Everything we do falls under the enrichment umbrella.
That makes sense.
So in that regard, we have one point of view. We're a pet supply company. We don't make human products, but we do make everything from slow feeder bowls to nylon toys. And, so we have a wide range of product types. I actually like this because it gives me a lot of room to grow because I'm not just competing in like one type of product.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't do well, or if it does well and then fades, it's like, that's all you got, right?
That's true. I think it's kind of before though, like having your sandbox and kind of playing within it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Way to put it.
yeah. So, but people do seem to understand that, oh, okay, this is my singular resource for all things enrichment. And so this strategy, like I said, is a bit more refined. And then when you talk to a big retailer, then you just have to, you have to figure out, how do they see you? Are they going to look to you just as a lick mat supplier, or, will they consider other enrichment products?
Yep. That's I think that's a good lesson for even maybe new companies or people that might be listening to this. Where do you see SodaPup going? Like, what's next for SodaPup?
Well, I think the biggest things are to continue to refine the enrichment point of view. So, like I said, what we're doing is we're shedding slow-moving SKUs that haven't found like a reliable following. So that's helping, just the things that you get rid of help you. What's left is more focused. And then in those areas where we're more focused, we're continuing to build on those categories. So, for example, at the Global Pet Expo, which is at the end of this month, we're introducing a soft bowl program. So there's a whole bunch of silicone bowls that are made in China, and they have different patterns. They rip off our stuff all the time, but we haven't really had much of a soft bowl program, and so we are introducing that with 4 SKUs at this show.
Cool.
Like I said, our enrichment sticks, our lick sticks, have been really popular, so we're adding another design there. We're doing a collection of toys for America 250, which is the 4th of July, 250th birthday of the U.S. We've got a few other things up our sleeves.
Awesome. Well, I'll keep an eye out. I'll be excited to see what you guys are coming out with next. But like I said, for anyone that hasn't already, definitely check out SodaPup. Check out their website. Their like I said, your promos you got going on. I think you said the honey pot and the flower pot. Check out their social media. Make sure to tag them if you're using their products and stuff. This was a really great chat. Adam, thanks for sharing your insight and continued success to you guys there at SodaPup. I look forward to continuing following along with your journey.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. I got to tell you that you look angelic because you have this round thing behind your head. It looks like a little bit of a halo.
You know what? I'm at my parents' place today, and I didn't have like a perfect place to set up. So I'm making do, and I think this was the best backdrop I could find around here. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
When you go back and look at the video, you're going to be like, exactly.
Well, so Adam, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and I'd love to connect and chat again in the future for sure.
Sounds good. Thanks, Matt. Take care.
Take care. Everyone, thanks again for joining us today on the Pet to Pal podcast.